Welcome to the MuseCast, where we squeeze every last drop of inspiration out of Sunday's sermon.
Welcome to the MuseCast. I am Shawna. I'm the engagement pastor here at Woodland Hills Church, and we are so glad to have you with us today. You may notice we look different. We're in a different space. We're together, but we're socially distanced, so we're obeying the rules. But Dan's not off in his home. I'm not in my room. Osheta's not off in her spots. We're all here together in our new studio, and we're really excited about that. We have with us Osheta Moore.
Hey everyone, I get to serve here at Woodland as outreach and teaching pastor.
Awesome. And we have Dan Kent.
Hey there, I am also a teaching pastor here at Woodland Hills, and I love our new studio. This is great.
So cool. I know. Feel very, very fancy.
I know.
Very professional.
We have tables and
I know,
everything.
right?
Look at that.
Big time. The MuseCast is going places. What we love to do during the MuseCast is talk about what we heard from our services on Sundays. So we get to continue that conversation. And we have been in a very different place than any of us would have imagined. First of all, throughout this pandemic, and then in the last few weeks, just talking about the realities of being in that place, hitting a wall, lamenting, and then things just seem to get really real, like really quick, especially here in the Twin Cities. And we got to hear from Greg about that this past Sunday. It was raw, it was prophetic, and then we also had some panel discussion. And so as we do in the MuseCast, we're going to dive in a little deeper and we're going to discuss that. And I want to start off today because normally, Dan, you give us a sermon summary, a brief summary. But today, we would love to know, you're white, right? You're a white male, in case anyone didn't realize. As you were sitting there and as you were hearing all that Greg had to say and the passion in which he said it and the vulnerability and then the panel discussion, like what were some of the thoughts going through your mind? How did that feel for you? How did you receive?
Yeah, so many different feelings. I mean, we're already dealing with a lot of feelings just from what's going on, and I think part of the chaos of a situation like this is just all of the variety of different feelings, grief and anger and frustration and dread and, shame, just so, being white, the shame is a big part of it, and not only am I a white guy, but I'm the blonde-haired, blue-eyed white guy. I've always been the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and that's sort of, in some circles is sort of the iconic white kind of devil is sort of that is, and that's been me, and so yeah, lots of different feelings and emotions. I mean, the first thing I would say is I was very proud of our church after that service. I was very proud to be part of this community because I just thought that Greg modeling what it looks like to be vulnerable and to be open to maybe not being, perfect, open to this idea that maybe he has room to grow and to learn, and just modeling that makes it okay for me to say that also. Like, I have a lot to learn still. And I think that's what I really got from this message is that, there's just so much more to learn, and it's not arbitrary stuff either, because it's not like, you go into a library and you get this feeling of look at all of the knowledge that there is to learn, and a lot of that knowledge is really arbitrary and meaningless, but this is not arbitrary stuff. This is important stuff, and so that's probably the biggest thing, and Greg said a few things that really hit me. What he said was, I'm just going to throw a bunch of different stuff out if you don't mind, sure. and then I have some questions for you as well. But he said that, because he was connecting this with last week's sermon, which was about lamenting from A to Z. And we're going through this coronavirus, and then all of a sudden, this huge racially hot event takes place. And we were already kind of feeling like, our situation was really bad. Yeah. And, Bob Dylan has this song that says, just when you think you've lost everything, you find out you can lose a little bit more. And boy, that's what it felt like. It felt like, man, it's like these nesting dolls, those Russian nesting dolls of traumatic experiences, and then all of a sudden we get to this middle one, and George is killed. And And Greg says that, last week he was talking about lamenting all the way and not short-circuiting his lament. And this week he kind of applied that to this racial situation where he's like, I have to experience my brothers and sisters' pain as much as possible. I being a white guy, this is Greg speaking, and I'm agreeing with this. I have an exit button. It's a lot easier for a white person to just get the heck out of the situation and to distance myself from the situation. And boy, that's a temptation. I mean, this situation is not fun. And of course, the temptation is to just get away from it and to run. And we can do that, but our black brothers and sisters can't. They don't have the same exit button privilege that Greg and I and the rest of the white church have. And so I think that on the kind of the bad news part of that is that, if we want to be supportive, we have to get better at not hitting that exit button. But the good side of that is I think that's where I'm trusting that by not hitting the exit button and by being perseverant, I'm not sure how you would say it, I trust that there are treasures of growth and relationship that will come out of that. And so that's what, as I strive to get better at not hitting the exit button, that's what I'm hoping for, is that it is by having the courage that Greg demonstrated on Sunday to throw myself into it in a vulnerable, kind of open posture, in a way that is one of learning and listening and just sticking with it. I'm hoping that it bears relational fruit, and I hope that it makes the situation so we don't have more of these types of horrible events happen. I think that's probably the initial kind of the big picture feel. There's just a ton of little things too that I felt like. First of all, Delon is a principal at a school. I didn't talk about the coolest principal ever. I mean, oh my goodness, my principal is nothing like that. So that's.
But the fact that he had to work twice as hard to get it, just to prove that he could do it. That's that part of the reality and the sadness.
Yeah, and really, and that's why I think the Q&A was so powerful to me and to white brothers and sisters that I've talked to who have heard that sermon, is they all kind of said the same thing, is they didn't really understand just the day-to-day burdens that some people in our community have, that they just don't think about, and having to work twice as hard, having to get 2 degrees instead of 1, having to always get a receipt when you go into a store. I always mock receipts. When people offer me a receipt, I'm like, I don't want that receipt. It's like 7 pages long, and I get a stick of gum, and it's like, look at all that paper that we're wasting. I get the privilege of mocking that and not realizing that, no, some people need to take that because of their situation.
Because not only do I take a receipt, but I have it visible.
Right.
Like, I don't shove it in my purse. It's like I have it in my hand as I'm walking out of the store, just so it's very clear.
Do you know what I thought when Cedric said that? I thought, this is one of those moments where, like, exactly, like, I want to hold a receipt, but I also have this strong creation care conviction. And it's kind of I can't really live into this core value because I have to protect this core value and who I am when I move through the world. And so it's like my purse is full of receipts, and I don't want a bunch of receipts. I'd rather have it, like, email or, like, on my phone, but even still, you know? So you can't do that because the world just doesn't trust brown.
I have a regular practice of taking all the receipts, shredding them, and then recycling because I feel so badly. This is so wasteful, but at the same time, it's not worth the hassle of not having it.
It's not.
And then, Osheta, I got emotional when you had said what you had said. You had said that God made us black, and He didn't make a mistake. And I just that really hit me hard. Just the feeling, just the fact that you needed to say that suggests that there is this underlying feeling in the black community that there's something wrong with being black. And kind of what Greg said is that the white church bears some of the responsibility for those feelings that our brothers and sisters have. And that was very convicting.
When Osheta, when you said that, it just reminded me of, at Woodland, we are so good at talking about and preaching about the fact that who we are in Christ, right? That we are His image bearers, and all of the litany of things that we are because Jesus says that we are. But the reality is, for many black and brown people, it's not, we can't just accept it right away.
Yeah.
Not because Jesus doesn't say it's true, but because so many other people
Right.
have called into question
Right.
who we are, our humanity, our worth, our value.
Yeah.
And so when you have those voices so very loud for such a long period of time, to hear that, no, this is who Jesus says you are, sometimes you have to work through that.
You do, and you have
Really
to be
hard.
diligent, and you have to be in a context where people are willing to hear that part of your journey and walk with you. Because I have talked to so many Black people that have left the church
Yeah.
because they don't feel like they're going through this process of loving who they are as a Black person,
Yeah.
and the church context that they're in doesn't allow for that, or doesn't make space for that, or doesn't even understand why that's an important thing. They say like we're colorblind,
Yeah.
and so they're like, I don't want that God. Like I don't. So maybe I won't go to church,
Yeah.
and maybe I'll still believe in God, but and so I feel like a lot of Black people's spiritual formation is stunted because we haven't done the work of honoring the Imago Dei and brown and Black people.
Absolutely. And we could hear that we're welcome. You are all are welcome here, like in a church. But then if we don't conform to the culture of the white way of doing church, then it becomes very clear that, not really so much welcome.
Yeah.
And that's hard.
And that's tricky. So thanks, Dan.
Yeah. And then, Shawna, you had said that there is a sense in which you've experienced where you don't get the same benefit of the doubt that white brothers and sisters get, and you shared a story of getting pulled over.
Yeah.
And that's one that I actually see, and I've seen that one,
Yeah.
and that's not fair, and it's unfortunate. And so I don't know what to do with that exactly, but other than, I guess, maybe acknowledge it at this point. And Greg did such a great job of giving, validating those experiences in a way that was, I thought, very humble and,
Yeah.
Well, I think that's the first step, honestly, Dan, is that believing piece. That is so huge for a Black person to say, this is my experience, and then for a white person to say, I don't get that, but I believe you. Like, that is an incredible act of love that I think just sort of kind of paves the way for us to kind of go deeper and pull back the veil on some of these things. And I think that's why we're seeing the outcry in our country right now, is because for so long, a lot of white people haven't believed it. They've heard it. Like, I've heard Black people tell white people, I've had to work twice as hard. I've been pulled over. I don't get the benefit of the doubt. I don't feel like I'm like, I've heard it all of my life. But I think now a lot of white people are saying, oh, like it is, like I believe it now. And so like, what do I do with that?
Yeah.
So I think that belief piece is real
It
important.
really is. It's huge, and it's like almost like breaking the veil of deception. I mean, so many Black and brown communities raise their children in different ways, just like Dion and Cedric talked about, the receipt, or not having your hands in your pocket, or a hoodie over your head. I think we have all taught our children about, when you're in the car, this is how you drive, this is where you keep your wallet, this is what you do. And then after all of this had happened, I saw a video and I literally crumbled because I just couldn't believe it. But it was a Black father talking through his son. If you ever get pinned down, like George Floyd did, if you ever get pinned down, son, this is what I need you to do, because I need you to survive this if you can. And so he was like going through a step-by-step process as to, take deeper, like all these things that he wanted his son to do in case, like not if, but just, in case, because the probability in his eyes is that it could happen. And like what Cedric said, like it's a numbers game, and he feels like the numbers are stacked against him. So it's not we don't get the opportunity to say, oh, that could possibly, like it's a very real possibility. So
and I wonder too, like just the Black church in general, and I've been reading some books, historical books on the history of the incarceration problem, and I just finished the Cross and the Lynching Tree, and one of the things that just marvels me about the Black church is that the perseverance that Black ministers have had through all of these things, because this idea that it's twice as hard, you have to work twice as hard, man, that's true in ministry too, because I see my white friends who start churches, and their attendance drops 10% and they throw in the towel, or they get a better job offer someplace and they quit their ministry. Here you have these Black ministers who have ministered to these oppressed communities for 50 years who they're lucky to get 3 or 4 people in their church sometimes, and they just stick with it, and that's why on one hand it's like I want to listen to and learn more about those experiences, especially if the white church has some responsibility for that. But I also want to find a way to celebrate the perseverance and the success. And how can we do that? How can we do both? Like, how can we both learn more about the oppression and then also celebrate the victory, do you think?
Well, I want to say that instinct is so meaningful to me, because I feel like there's a lot of attention to Black pain, but not a lot of attention to Black joy or Black excellence or celebrating. So I just want to say thank you for saying that out loud.
Yeah.
I think what you can do is talk to Black people and talk to Black ministers and say, like, what do you love? What's great in your life? And there's a hashtag Carefree Black Kids. You can look at the hashtag Black Joy. Like, there are ways that you can go and see our community still thriving and loving being Black and persevering even in the midst of this world that is constantly looking for their pain over their joy.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really great way to start. And also, like, I really, like, one of the things because I'm on social media, like, one of the things that just blows my mind sometimes is if I post, like, a traumatic, like, story about being Black, I get tons of responses, tons of engagement. But then if I post something like, I feel like I'm, like, honoring my ancestors with this look or whatever, it's like, crickets or happy engagement.
Yeah.
And I think it's I don't know, I think maybe, I'm curious, like, is it because white people feel more like they know how to handle, like, they know how to respond to trauma and pain, but they don't know how to respond to, like, oh, I'm just glad. Because I feel like if I see another, like, white influencer, like, be like, I'm rocking this look, they get hundreds of. So I'm really curious, why do you think that happens?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I've even seen, because lately, lately, it's been going on for forever, but it feels like lately people are becoming aware of the fact that little Black girls and little Black boys have a certain amount of discrimination they face in school systems because of their hair.
Yeah.
And so we've been really trying to celebrate, Black girl magic and beautiful Black hair and all. And sometimes when I see those posts, people go after that in a negative way, and they try to say that we're being exclusive or racist or whatever. And I'm like, it's trying to take something that's been used to weigh people down and discriminate and make them feel less than, and trying to celebrate it and be okay with it. And even that idea is too much for some people, and it's hard. It's just hard. I don't have an answer.
Yeah. I just want to say thank you
for
bringing that, because that is a real part of this struggle is I don't always want to be like your place to feel bad, and I don't want your pity, I want your partnership. I want to be in relationship with you.
Yeah. Well, and I think definitely we're white culture and kind of what white people spend their money on. We have movies called Girl Interrupted, which is all about suicidal teenagers, and boy, we just eat that stuff up, and we love that kind of the drama of the tragic, and unfortunately, I think that that develops certain skills for tragedy and that, but it doesn't develop certain skills at, like, helping people succeed and doing good things and celebrating successes and.
Well, even like a couple years ago when Black Panther was out and it was so huge, and we were like, this is amazing, like, representation matters. Like, there was way too much blowback on that.
Way too much.
Like, what does it hurt for someone else to be proud of their culture succeeding?
Yeah.
All right, so now I have to share some awkward stuff.
Okay.
So,
oh gosh.
We can hold it. We love you, Dan.
All right. So
here we go.
I'm just like a history of embarrassing statements. I'm just a walking history of just saying the wrong thing, and I just looking over my past. Like I took this class in college on Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and Rigoberta Menchú, and I loved it, and I just ate it up. Curtis Paul DeYoung was the teacher, and I think he's in charge of reconciliation in Minnesota for Minnesota churches or something like that now. And I just loved that class, and I got an A in the class, and I ate that class up. And then, you know, I kind of had this feeling like, you know, I'm totally part of the anti-racism movement, and I have some black friends, and I have, you know, I've read Martin Luther King, and I'm all about this. And there's this false sense of confidence that I have in what I know and what I don't know about what my black brothers and sisters are experiencing, and there's this, I guess, sort of arrogance about the issue, and looking back on it now, you see just so many new layers to this that I just had no idea about, even though I had submitted myself to that stuff and took that class and read those books, and there's just more and more layers of it that I was unaware of. So I guess, you know, and we had a question sent into the email box, MuseCast at whchurch.org, and she kind of wants to know how do you show your support to black brothers and sisters without saying all the embarrassing things that I might have said, like, hey, I have a black friend, and so this doesn't apply to me, and I mean, how can I better, like, do that in a way that doesn't put my foot in my mouth?
Well, no, I'm laughing because we were having this conversation. I'm sorry, you guys, but we were having this conversation before the show started, and just some of the things that we hear, like, well, I have black friends, or my third cousin married a black dude, and somehow people feeling like that makes it, you know, racism is gone. I'm not a part of it, and so that's why I'm laughing. I'm not laughing.
No,
at
you can laugh at me. You have full credit, even if you were.
I would say, listen, white people, like, you can't.
Right.
You can't. You cannot do this deeply relational work without making mistakes.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things that I feel specifically passionate about as a black Anabaptist, black peacemaker, I can't speak for Shawna, but I want to hold that. Just like I said, we can hold your awkwardness.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay. You're going to make mistakes. And I think if we look at all of our best relationships, we have made mistakes in those relationships. Yeah. And so when I hear somebody say, like, oh, I have a black friend, my question is, has that black friend tried to talk to you about race, and have you shut them down? That's the point where you go to that. Sure, it's great to have that black friend. That's the point you go to them and you say, hey, I'm open. Tell me your experience. Because I think that the Holy Spirit can create this safe space for you within that relationship if they're willing, where you could kind of process some of those things. Like, okay, like, I really do feel like, because I read all of MLK's work, that I get it. And they're like, yeah, but no. You know, so I think that a lot of white people are lacking that space where they can actively process with a brown or black person that's willing to kind of hold them through it and not vilify them. But I'm just saying, you can't. Like, you're gonna make mistakes. Right. And I think that the fact that you're willing to be vulnerable and make a mistake in front of us is a way that we are building vulnerability and trust with each other. And I think that that's what God wants. Yeah. I don't think God wants us to do this anti-racism work perfectly. Right. I think he wants us to persevere in it, right?
Yeah, and I think if you are in relationship with people, then you do give them the benefit of the doubt. You know, even if you're not afforded that yourself, you do give people the benefit of the doubt. And I think it is important, like, if you are white and you are trying to seek to understand and enter in, then don't claim that you get it at any point, because I guarantee you maybe have gotten it more than you did previously, but you've never totally gotten it, because there were just so many layers. So many layers.
Can I say one more thing?
I don't get it. Let me write this down here.
Listen, this is not just a white and black thing. Like, I do not have a child on the spectrum, so I have to sit with my friends who have children on the spectrum and be like, help me understand, like, what your life is like. What are the, like, help me know what are the wrong words to say. Help me know the important days to, like, lift up and help like there's a posture of humility that I have to enter into with somebody whose experience is different than mine, that I may have a little bit of privilege. Like, I don't, that, you know, not to say autism or having a child on the spectrum is a bad thing, but like, our lives are a little bit different than theirs, and I just want to know, and because I want to love them well.
You don't have a natural understanding. So
Exactly.
you're seeking to understand.
Exactly. And so I think, so I don't want people to think, oh, this is only a white and black thing. Like this is the humility of Christ that we are asking each of us to enter into.
Yeah.
Specifically though around this area of race, but I think we do this in lots of other areas too. So
That's good.
Yeah.
And I feel like like I said, I'm biracial, and so I have a different layer of perspective, and I have really had to keep my own heart in check because I have friends who are white, who love me, I know that, who are well-meaning, and have said to me things like, I don't even see you as black, without realizing what that can do to me. And so I could either take that hurt and say, yep, here we go again, and like chalk it up to another thing, or I can say, no, I believe in this person's heart for me, and have the conversation to say, hey, can I tell you how that truly makes me feel when you say something like that? So we, yes, we have been marginalized, but at the same time, we do hold responsibility too. If we're in relationship with one another and we're trying to understand one another, to bring some stuff up.
Wow.
But I would add on to that though, but I think as a white person or the person who's coming to that conversation, you need to get permission from that person, because I wouldn't expect every mother with a child on the spectrum to then be my techer about that stuff, right? So I think, I just think that there are some steps that we do need to take because just to make sure that that black person is willing to enter and do that work. They may not be able to. They may have a whole lot of healing that they need to do, so they may not be able to like sit and say like, let me, walk you through that. So I think just kind of asking the Lord to put people in your life to help you process that. White people, Dan, I trust you, Dan. I know you're doing that. But like asking the Lord to put people in your life, trusting that those people will come, and when they do, just being respectful about the way you engage that.
Humility and respect and love.
Yeah, and then forgiveness and
I do have one more question. Dylan said something that really hit me during the Q&A or during the discussion part of the service. He said that, and this just crushed me. I mean, he said that, and I know he didn't mean this totally. He was just expressing his feeling. But he said his first response to the situation with George was that I don't have much hope for change. And that crushed me. And I know that he was just expressing a feeling. I'm sure he has hope in Christ and all of that. But it made me want to know if you two feel, what amount of hopelessness do you two feel if you do, and what hope do you have? What gives you hope about these societal issues and these racial issues, both in the church and in society?
I think it depends on the day that you ask me. I think it ebbs and flows as far as my hope. My hope in Jesus, that is secure, that never wavers. My hope in humanity sometimes does. Like I said on Sunday, when I saw just a portion and then I couldn't go on anymore, when I saw it, my first thought was, well, maybe now people will understand, maybe now people will see, maybe now people won't immediately go to the, but what about this and what about that? That typically seems to happen. And then when I saw that wasn't the case, I sunk a little bit. But what has helped is having brothers and sisters who look different than me say, I'm so sorry, I see you, I want to do better. The outcry of the country, of other countries, gives me a little bit of hope. But it's kind of like suspended hope, because we still don't know, like, is there truly going to be justice? And when I say justice, I know the only real justice is him being alive. I know that. But is there going to be accountability for those 4, not just the one, but those 4 officers? So for me personally, I'm not speaking for a community here, there is suspended hope, because when will there be consequences?
Well, it's almost concentric circles for me. I feel like I have a lot of hope within my immediate sphere. Like the people in my family, the people who we're friends with, like I have hope in them. Like I know that they've done their work. I trust them. Within the, like here at Woodland, where I work, and like I feel hope. But then kind of when it spreads out, I'm just like, a little less hope.
Yeah.
A little less
It's
hope.
a little shaky.
And so, and sometimes I can kind of just live in here, which like I can just be like, okay, things are okay. But then when something rattles out here, then I'm like, what? Like I don't know how to have hope. But I am grateful. I think that's a word that I feel comfortable using right now. I am grateful that there are so many white leaders. I'm grateful for Greg and using his voice. I'm grateful that I am hearing people take responsibility and ownership and say like, oh, this thing is not going to change unless we as white people say we want this to change.
Right.
And so I feel like I'm grateful for that, and that is kind of like my on-ramp to hope. Like I'm just like, hope is on that interstate. Maybe I'm going to get there, but like, because I'm just, yeah, I'm in the theater. But I can't say that I have a whole lot of hope because I honestly like, I wish I didn't have to see Ahmaud Arbery shot jogging, or Breonna Taylor, who looks like me and looks like women that I love. You know, like I just wish I didn't have to see any more of these, and I just know if this were if seeing someone or knowing someone was killed, a black person was killed, was enough, then Tamir Rice, like a little boy,
who's just playing in a park.
Just playing in a park, you know, like that would have been enough. Emmett Till, like that would have been enough.
Should have been enough.
That should have been enough. I mean, it was everywhere. It was every images of his.
Yeah.
So I don't have hope that this instance is going to make anything change unless white people say not on our watch anymore.
Yeah. Thank you for being one of those people, though.
Yeah.
I'm trying. I'm learning.
Well, guys, thank you for joining us. You are getting some real, vulnerable, and raw MuseCast in the last couple of weeks. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your support. Thank you for sending in your questions and your comments. We see them, we read them, we appreciate them. Have a great day, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, friends. Stay safe, stay healthy.